You're recording it.
I'm doing it.
Is it recording?
I think, yes, it is. Nailed
It's like
it.
we've only had like 7 years to figure Zoom out.
Only five. I think when we get to seven, then we can be like, oh man.
Is
But
it being five? What way? Right. It's five. Five. Wow, my maths is whew,
well, 2020. So just add
just
what year.
it feels
Just
like
add
10.
what year we're in. Just do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I'm glad. Thanks for saying yes to talking to me about this season because it's always nice to have these conversations about the process before we embark upon them, um, and then share them with our audience. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, where are you talking to us from now, Emma?
Yes. I am talking to you from Montreal, where I have been
Amazing.
living for the past few months.
What are you doing there?
Oh my gosh. You.
Our listeners don't know.
Our listeners don't know, so I guess we'll tell them. I am currently a directing student at the National Theatre School of Canada. So we are currently in the conference room at the school. And yeah, so I'm coming up to the end of my first of 2 years here.
Well, that's exciting. So next year's okay, good. Well,
Yep.
and you're gonna come back to Winnipeg and direct Macbeth.
I'm going to do it. And now we've said that, we've cursed the entire theater school. So this is good.
Well, you're not inside a theater, so you're
No.
okay.
There are theaters downstairs. So depending on how you want to.
Oh yeah, you're right.
But
How you frame it, yeah.
yeah,
Well, and also as Jake says, and as you like it, all the world's a stage. So I think
that's true.
saying it anywhere is a curse. So you're directing Macbeth. I'm directing Waiting for Godot. We're sharing some actors because we're doing a rep system this year again,
Yeah.
which drives stage management bonkers when they're scheduling rehearsals for us as the
Mhm.
actors travel from room to room. But tell me, like, to start our sort of like Hollywood roundtable of directors conversation, which
Yeah.
this clearly
A
is,
round table of two. Yeah.
of two,
It's just a
a
line.
roundtable on Zoom of two. Um, what are you looking forward to the most in terms of directing at the Ruins and in specific Macbeth?
Oh, good question. I mean, starting off, not talking about the play, I just love working at the Ruins. For people who don't know, I was the assistant director. I was Rod's assistant director on the premiere of The Dark Lady back in 2023, was it? We did that show. Um,
2023, yeah, feels like a long time ago. 7 years ago.
7 years ago. And I just loved being out there, and I feel like in a lot of ways theater's kind of like summer camp where you go and you meet a group of people and you're together for a very intense amount of time, and then the show opens, the show ends, and it's like, oh, we might never see you again. A little less so in Winnipeg because we're such a tight community, but
Hmm.
it's like this group of people coming together on this project again. But because you're at the Ruins, because we're out in St. Norbert, and we're out in nature, it really does even more so feel like a summer camp. And I was never a kid that went to like a sleepaway camp, so this is my version of like, it's the best camp ever because we're doing theater and I can go home to indoor plumbing at the end of the day. It really,
Uh,
my ideal camp. Um, when it comes to Macbeth, I think doing it out in nature is something that really, really excited me when we started talking about this and I started thinking about it in the sense that there is quite a bit of nature imagery in Macbeth, and so much of the world is what happens to the natural order of things once Macbeth does the big thing you're not supposed to do, which is, I was gonna say spoiler alert, the play has been published for a few years, so people like might know what's going
just
on,
more
but
centuries. Yeah, I think you're okay. I think it's assumed that he does a bad thing to become king.
he does a bad thing to become king, but we won't spoil it for you in case you have missed this plot.
Yeah.
Um, so he does a bad thing to become king, and that really throws the whole natural world out of order. So it was really interesting to me to think about doing this play that is so much about that in nature itself. And also, Scotland is lush and beautiful where the play is set, and Winnipeg, the ruins, also lush and beautiful.
Yeah, I know. People forget that. Like you raise a good point in terms of like Shakespeare wrote for outdoors theater.
Yeah.
Like he wrote. and his plays were performed in the afternoon, and there were bear baitings happening outside, and it
There
was
sure were.
in the hustle and bustle of the South Bank in London, the sort of like, red light district of London at the
Mhm.
time, the forbidden zone, the chaotic zone of crime and drinking and other pleasurable offenses,
Yeah, all those
and
things.
in the midst of all that, theater, right? So it was a
Mhm.
quite chaotic, loud, unpredictable environment outdoors in England, which, weather-wise, having lived there, and anybody who knows a little bit, it's a bit of a, not a friendly outdoor weather, right? And and and
No.
and here you are doing this intense piece, um, outdoors in the ruins, in
Mhm.
this in the he often talks about forests, right? He's got a thing for
Does.
forests, and the forest of Arden being sort of like, his hometown
Mhm.
forest, which shows up in two. Sometimes I forget he uses the forest of Arden twice, right? Dream and in As You Like It,
Yes, yeah.
I think, yeah. And then, of course, in Macker's, spoiler alert, there's a moving forest.
There's some
Um,
woods. Yep.
there's some woods, and we have those woods, right?
We
I had such a
do.
hard time, like, I mean, like, your play is more intimate because it's about this sort of like, and you could say it was written for indoors at the time for the black box candlelit theater he also had.
Yeah.
Um, but like last year when I was doing Dream,
Mhm.
the whole play set in a forest, and then when people do that in indoors theaters, they just put up trees on stage.
Yeah.
And when I was thinking about the design of the show, I was like, I have the tree. I have the trees.
But
um
I think
yeah.
that's a gift, right? That you're like, I can, something that we talk a lot about here is this, the fabrication of the natural on stage and like, and that relationship. And I think there's something really beautiful about being like, we are going to bring the audience to the show in a new way, and that they are going to interact with nature in a play that is so much about nature, that is set in nature. I think it's very beautiful.
You're right, yeah. It does present some challenges, right? Are you like, are you anxious about any potential challenge when it comes to outdoor theater?
Uh, always. Um, yeah, I mean, of course, there is unpredictability with the weather, with a myriad of things. The weather is kind of the biggest thing on my mind, kind of knowing what our springs into summer have been like the past few years. But I think that's part of the challenge and part of the fun is like we are bearing ourselves to the element. Like it's a very like we're doing it. We're young. We're scrappy. We're just getting in there. We're gonna make some art.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I do love that. I do think that, I'm not sure how you feel agree, but I do think that theater has become this exclusive fancy night,
Mm.
sort of like, comfy in the dark, hidden event. And SIR is so not that, right? Like we are more like the folk fest meets, I don't know, Woodstock.
Yeah.
And it's unadorned is a word I use a lot. And it is, like you say, scrappy, unadorned. Michel Boulet, my predecessor, used to call warriors of art because you're sort of like shouting to the wind, fighting the mosquitoes. I think that makes for better acting. Honestly, do you think so?
Oh, it's not a question that I have thought of before. I think it challenges you in a different way.
Hmm.
I don't know if I could say it's better or worse, but I can say that because you're fighting against so many things, you're fighting like that only raises the stakes and the intention, and in we talk about in theater of the objective of what does your character want. I
Hmm.
think it raises all of that because you're fighting for that so deeply, and you have to really invest in that fight, because it becomes not like, oh, I'm fighting my for what I want, but I know in 30 seconds this lighting cue is going to go and this sound cue is going
Hmm.
to be there. It's very much like I'm fighting for what I want, and maybe a helicopter is going to come. Maybe a fox is going to join me on stage. Maybe, like there are so many Maybe it's going to start downpouring. There are so many variables that can come up that I think you have to be so strong in your convictions that
Hmm.
it's a different kind of training.
I agree. I agree. What I like about that is that it takes the actors out of their heads. Because I gotta say, as an actor, some of the worst acting I've ever done is when I think I know what I'm doing. You
Yeah.
know, I go like, oh, next moment I'm gonna do this thing. Oh, I'm so clever.
Yeah.
And then the moment comes, and then the actor I'm talking to does something else. And then I go,
Mhm.
oh, it didn't work out the way I thought it was gonna work out. And then I'm out of it, right?
Yeah.
And I find that in the ruins, you don't have you just that's impossible to kind of have. You are always looking out of yourself, right?
Hmm.
So because first of all, you can see the audience, right? It's right
Yeah.
there.
Yep.
Do you think that's hard? Do you think, you know, like I do think that comedies tend to work better at the Globe Theatre in the UK.
Mm.
You know, I saw Macbeth there. I stood for
Mhm.
3 hours watching Macbeth there, and I thought it was a good production.
Yeah.
Um, but I've seen some tragedies there, and I was like, oof, this is a long time to stand. Granted, I was standing, right?
Yes.
But there's something about comedies in the outdoors that feels more like a rock concert. Do you have any thoughts or concerns about putting a tragedy on in the outdoors where you can see the audience so clearly and the sunshine is gorgeous?
Yeah, I mean, the sunshine is definitely something that I have thought of, and that, even the opening stage directions of Macbeth are like thunder and lightning, and I'm like, well, then and the sun is shining. It's a beautiful day. Fingers crossed, we hope. Knock on some wood here. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think I'm trying to look at it as a challenge and an invitation of like how do you create atmosphere and how do you create mood when you're outside the confines of a theater when you don't have, you can't use blackouts, you can't use the sound effects of thunder and lightning. I think it invites invitation and really that kind of that theater magic of, okay, put your creativity to it. How do you create these things that maybe we take for granted a little bit in the theater to say like, oh yeah, like I know how to achieve that, check, moving on. This kind of invites you to dig a
Mhm.
little deeper and to really investigate how to do that. I think with the audience, I think it's a cool thing to have for Macbeth for a few reasons. The first of which being that we have these witches, we have these supernatural creatures who are around, and I think it's very cool that they can have a relationship with the audience because they kind of exist out of time. They know things that we as mortals don't. They know all of this, and so yeah, I think that's really exciting to kind of figure out what's their relationship with an audience that they can see. Also in the promenade nature of, you know, we're still some things are still up in the air, but do they help the audience move from place to place? Do they watch certain moments of the show? Like there's a lot I think that you can play with there. And because so much of this play is about isolation, particularly with Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, but also with the other characters you see fleeing the country, getting away from Macbeth, from not knowing who they can trust in this society. I think in that way as well, it's very nice to have an audience because it allows you to form a connection in a different way that you can't connect with the people maybe beside you this way, but you can connect out because it's like who can I trust, who can I turn to, and then the audience becomes that in a way. So I think it uses them in a way that perhaps you can't in a, here's the edge of the stage and the audience is out here.
That's right, yeah. And again, you're closer to a Shakespearean original practice than the black box theater, right? You're actually doing the thing he was doing himself.
Yeah, we're
Do
gonna bring
you
a bear. We're gonna bear bait. Just wait for it.
We're gonna have bear baiting,
There's
we're
just
gonna
gonna be a
have
bear. There's just gonna be a bear hanging around.
there's always a bear.
I think. Yeah.
Oh my God. You mentioned the supernatural. Do you think, I
Hmm.
mean, back in Shakespeare's day, they clearly believed in witches. Like it was part of the world. And
Yeah,
this play
yeah.
was written for King James. King James wrote a book on dark magic and witches, and he was very much a
Yes.
believer or at least fascinated by that topic.
Hmm.
And the supernatural was very much part of it was a world of a very intimate relationship with death, given that it was a pandemic, plague ravaged world, theaters closing and opening endlessly. we went through this 5 years ago in such a traumatic way,
We
but
sure
the way he
did.
was going through it was ongoing, right, all the
Mhm.
time
Yeah.
with the plague around. So the idea of death was very much present, and the idea of witches and the beyond was very much present. Do you think it presents an impediment to staging Macbeth today that we have these witches and we don't for the most part believe in witches anymore?
Mm, good question. You know what, I don't. I think because, I mean, maybe I just speak for myself here, but I'm someone like, I'm not a particularly religious person or like, yes, the supernatural, it's all around us. But I do believe kind of like in a spirituality and in like, there are definitely forces, I think, outside of what we understand that kind of have an influence on things and that impact life and what goes on. And so I think I certainly feel that connection to something other, and I hope that others do too.
Interesting, yeah. I like that. I think we want to believe in something.
I think so. I think
Um,
it's nice to believe there's like a higher power.
and
Yeah.
that's sort of like how oh, it is comforting, especially these days of absolute
Mhm.
mayhem.
Yes.
I don't believe in a higher power in
Yeah.
the
Okay.
way, but I certainly talk to people that have died regularly that were
Hmm.
mentors or friends. I can think of Martha Henry and Glenn Thompson, a
Yeah.
dear friend and a dear mentor, and I still find myself talking to them, you
Hmm.
know, and um, and there's something comforting about that for sure.
Hmm.
Um, which is interesting, right? Like, I'm just now thinking on the spot here in terms of like the very nature of Shakespearean theater, where you have these soliloquies, you have these outwardly ruminations of the mind. The inner thoughts are shared and revealed and found with the audience, which is unique to Shakespearean theater.
Hmm.
When the actor turns to the audience and go like, "I see a dagger. Is this a dagger which I see before me?" Like, or
Yeah.
to be or not to be. So there's something comforting about talking, right, out loud, whether it be with an audience or an imaginary friend or somebody who has
Hmm.
passed. And I wonder if that's what Shakespeare was kind of touching on, a quality of, I don't know. It's hard to be stuck in here, but if you talk it out loud, you kind of work it out, right?
Yeah.
You work it out. So I don't know, but that's certainly what I'm thinking about in terms of waiting for Godot, in that
Hmm.
they're waiting for something.
Yeah.
Like they're waiting for this creature, this or person or thing that they said was coming,
Hmm.
and maybe that's going to provide answers to their predicament in the moment.
Yeah.
So this waiting, this hoping, this talking through things, I don't know, there's something there.
I did. That's Samuel Beckett. He knew, maybe. He knew a few things.
Yeah, he did. Do you like, what do you think about putting these two plays in relationship to each other? Like we share some actors.
Mm-hmm.
Your three witches are gonna
Yes,
be in my show.
that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, how do you find yourself going like, how does this relate to the other play?
Hmm. I think the connection that I see with them is are these themes of kind of like of isolation and of waiting, of something I was thinking a lot about in your show is kind of the difference of doing it in a theater where we're aware of where the theater ends, where the back wall is, where things end, and the difference of doing it in nature. You can speak to this too, where it's so big, it's so expansive. It just keeps extending and extending. So yeah, I think that's it. That we're dealing with characters, whether it be the Macbeths or whether it be the two gents in Godot, that they are so isolated in their situations and what they're trying to achieve. And that's the connection I see between the two of them.
Hmm. Yeah, I like the isolation. And do you think, like, what do you think of the comedic moments of a play so dark, like
Mm,
Macbeth, like because Shakespeare does this, right? And Godot is known for being a bleak play as well, but full of laughs and bits. Like
yeah.
like you have these two vaudevillian characters, and their pants fall down, they exchange hats, and they do weird things, and then you have Macbeth, and in the darkest moment of the play,
Hmm.
right, when a murder happens that kind of turns the world upside down, and you have horses eating each other and stuff like that, a clown comes out.
Hmm.
Like, what do you think is happening there?
Yeah, I think well, it's so true to life, right? When we,
Uh,
when dark stuff happens, like we look and we're like, where's the humor? Where can we find some relief? Where can we release this pressure valve? So I think it's partially that. I also think in Macbeth, when all of this happens, that if we just went all dark all the time, and perhaps similarly in Godot too, the audience kind of tunes out, right? It's like, we reach a point where we hit and we're like, okay, that's about enough of that as we could take, and goodbye and good night. And that was me trying to leave off the Zoom screen. But I think by having these moments of comedy, these moments of levity, they allow us to sort of take a breath, have a bit of renewal, and kind of recenter ourselves before we enter in, so that I think we can experience the breadth of all this play is giving us in terms of the extremities of feeling.
yeah, I agree. I agree. It's funny, right? Like the variety of tones and rhythms, and the shift between high and low notes.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, that is why I think Shakespeare is still so explored, and why he's so complex. It is, and Beckett as well.
Yeah.
It is the variety
Yeah.
of perspectives, the variety of tones, the variety of language, the variety of characters' POV. It's
Hmm.
just, and that provides endless reinterpretations, right?
Yeah.
So speaking of that, can you tell us a bit about your interpretation, like where you're putting this world? Like Robert Lepage is currently rehearsing as we speak,
Yes,
um,
he
in
yes, he
Stratford,
is.
copycat.
I know. He said Emma's doing it, so I gotta do it.
That's right. So Lepage is rehearsing this in Stratford right now. And he's setting that in the 1970s world of Quebec, biker gangs.
Hmm.
Like these are rival gangs. He has actual real motorcycles on stage because they have the budget.
Yeah.
A friend of mine who's in the show sent me a picture of him wearing a leather jacket that says Codder on the back.
Oh, cool.
So they have these gangs. The fiefdoms are gangs, and the cotters and the fife. They all sort of like they're gangs in the
Yeah.
'70s in Quebec. Um, that's his world, his way into Macbeth.
Hmm.
What's your way into Macbeth?
Well, it's the 1970s, and no, I'm just kidding.
And there are gangs in Manitoba.
Yeah, no, you got it.
Um,
And yeah,
yes.
yeah, that's it. No, my way in, when I went back to it, I was thinking a lot about the original source, the original tale of Macbeth, way back in the 1100s. It's a word I don't say often, the 1100s. And I was thinking about these battlefields and these Scottish warriors, and that's kind of where my mind went as a starting place. And then I was really thinking a lot about um, the fact that we are doing it outside, we're doing it in nature, and I really wanted to bring some of that forward. And so, as mentioned, there's quite a bit of garden imagery in the play, and I became inspired by Lady Macbeth's line, "Look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent underneath." And so that's kind of become a big inspiration for the play too. That I really see the kind of the whole world as this garden, um, and on the surface, the Macbeths they look lovely. They're the loveliest flowers in the garden, but what you don't see underneath are their roots, which I think extend and kind of suck the life and suck the resources out of the other things in the garden. And when that isn't a possibility for them anymore, they turn on themselves and they start to kind of eat themselves in a way. So that's really the lens in which I have been viewing the play, which has led us into a little bit of a maybe fantastical world. But yeah, that's our starting place, and it's been really fun to
Yeah.
collaborate with the team on that.
That's great. So it's certainly
Yeah.
not a world of cell phones and machine guns or knives.
No, and well, some daggers show up. Again, spoiler alerts for those of you who
Dagger,
haven't read it.
swords. You want swords,
But
right?
yes, and that's, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I think swords with this as well is something I was thinking of where Macbeth and Banquo and all of these fighters are so skilled with the sword, and that's something I really wanted to show too, that this life that they've chosen, this warrior's life, like they trained, there's a beauty to what they do, even though it is horrible and often used for killing. But I think when you kill someone with a sword too, like you have to, it's not like a gun where you can be, over in yonder field and shoot and kill someone. Like you have to get up close and personal to deliver that killing blow. And that's something that I wanted to keep too, that I thought we would lose if we went in a more modern way. No offense to Mr. Lepage.
Now that's interesting.
You know?
I like that. You speak of an intimacy in the act of killing that is not the modern warfare
No.
experience, right? Although we're kind of experiencing a little bit of that these days, given the fear of nuclear attack. But there is a something strangely sensual and sexual about the killing with a sword, right? There's something
Yeah.
penetrative about it. It's quite disturbing, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And given the play is drenched in sexual imagery and sensuality and the body,
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's wise to sort of be in a world where it feels like the taking of somebody's life is so intimate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's yeah. I find similar things in Godot in terms of
Mhm.
like the intimacy between those two lead characters. They're
Yeah.
so desperate for each other and they're so hungry, and there's a lack of resources in this wasteland that feels like a post-apocalyptic world,
Yeah.
and they're they're rummaging through things, but they have each other, right? And the
Mhm.
moments of tension in the play are moments where they turn on each other, or
Mm-hmm.
they reject each other,
Yeah.
or they're left alone and abandoned. But as long as they have each other, it's not so bad to sit around in the wasteland of the end of the world. you know, you kind of have to lean on each other.
Hmm.
I find that interesting, and of course, in Macbeth, when Lady M and Mackers start to go separate ways, the whole thing breaks down, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think of their relationship?
Oh, their relationship. I found it fascinating to revisit, and when I say revisit, I studied this play in high school, but hadn't really come back to it since then. And it's been a decade now to think about that. So going back to revisit it, the equality between them from the beginning was something that really stuck out to me, that I get the sense that unlike in some of Shakespeare's other plays, they really are equals, they really are partners. They're they're going to push each other, they're going to try and bring out the best in each other, even if their vision of what is the best is maybe not the best because we shouldn't murder people, but they're going to go achieve their ambitions. And yeah, like you said, I think it's a very beautiful, intimate relationship, and I think they're very able to bare their souls to each other. And that it's when that stops, when he starts to isolate her, that they really go down the path into grief and paranoia and guilt and all of this, and it starts eating away at them, because suddenly this person that you could trust on, your confidant, your friend, your person who saw every side of you and said, yes, I accept you, I love you, they're not there anymore. And then I think it's what happens. It's where that isolation component comes in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, true, true. And do you think did you come across anything in your research or in your readings about like a curious fact about the play or the characters that you hadn't thought of before, or anything about the background, the history of the play that makes you go, "Oh, that's weird and interesting." That you kind of that has informed you how to see the play anew,
Hmm.
or any curious incident or thing you came across?
Yeah, it is a good question. I think there are two that come to mind. The first comes from, like you said, that this was written in the time of King James, and I did not realize kind of how into the supernatural he was. And I'm going to say this, and I should have fact checked this ahead of time, but that's okay. That I believe one of his fleets or something, there was something to do with a shipwreck, with a storm that the boat was going down or went down. Some, anyways, listeners can look it up. There was
They can
something to
Google it.
do
They
with,
can Google it.
yeah, with a boat. And King James was like, yes, it was witches. That is the reason this happened. It was all because of the supernatural,
Wow.
which was wild. And I was like, oh, I think we really have to lean into that in this kind of world where that kind of superstition, where it's not like, oh, the current was this at this point, or it was, the winds picked up and that's why, but to fully go, it was witches, and everyone went, you betcha, you bet it was. That I was like, that world is so fascinating to me. And I think the other thing that allowed me to kind of see the play anew comes from the fact that I wanted to bring in a few more women to this play, uh,
Hmm.
and gender swapping some of the roles and kind of investigating if you make certain characters female, if you make certain characters male, what that does to the story and how that affects the dynamics and the relationships in the play. And one of the biggest examples that comes up is that Banquo in this production will be a woman, which I really loved. And I did a lot of research into famous female warriors in
Oh,
Scotland
great.
and them being on the battlefield. There's a very famous one whose name I cannot say, but I can spell it should you want to Google, which is Scat Scat Um, and so she in mythology is this big female warrior known as the Shadow on the battlefield. And I was like, that's so cool. And I wanted to bring in some of that energy as well. That I think it helps when Macbeth is, killing people in his life, and Lady Macbeth sends away her feminine side as well. That it's in the killing of the feminine that also kind of puts them down this path as well.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's really cool. It makes
yeah.
me think. Yeah, it makes me think of my favorite film, Blade Runner, which is this the reclaiming and the twisted reclaiming of the female body and the creation of these androids, and that a world devoid of beauty and steep in chaos.
Mhm.
You have these men creating the perfect women, and there are these androids, right? So that there's something about that society and the female warrior that's such a male society, such
Yeah.
a toxic society. It's interesting to have those characters. I like that. Do you have also the Seaward, the warrior?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. Old C word. We couldn't go through in my mind. We couldn't go through the play and have at the end it's just men left in that. I was like, we need to bring in some women too. And so I thought flipping C word would be a lovely way to do that, and to have this person who supports Malcolm, the young king, as this kind of wise older woman who is renowned for her skills.
I love it. I love it. Well, and to wrap it up, since we're coming to the close to the end of our conversation
Are
here,
we really? Okay.
chatted for a while here now. It's
Did. I
fantastic.
just got so into it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, is there anything else you like in terms of like the audience's experience of this event? The first time we're doing Mackers in nearly 30 years.
Yeah. Is it wild if I say I wasn't alive last time you did Mackers, so it's wild.
I wasn't living here, I didn't speak English, and I think I was like 13 years old. So yes, and you
Wild.
weren't alive at
I
all.
was not around.
Ah, I love it. Is there anything you're looking forward to in terms of like their experience of the play that you're designing here? Like, what do you want them to sort of like? What are you excited about for them?
Yeah, I'm excited. Well, first of all, that Shakespeare, he knew what he was doing. It's a pretty good script. Just, just the language of it is so beautiful. But I hope today this story of ambition, of people who have unchecked ambition and who achieve it in such heinous ways, and the people who then stand up and say, no, that's not right, I think is very timely today. So from maybe a themes perspective, that would be something I'm excited about. And outside of that, I think for the things that I've mentioned, the exploration of gender as we understand it now, as opposed to 400 years ago when Shakespeare was doing that, and kind of what these dynamics mean, and the relationships that we can have with the audience, and the fact that we're going to take you all around the ruins, and it's going to be pretty fun. Yeah, so I think it's going to be a very entertaining night or afternoon, should you matinee, no judgment either way, of theater. It's going to be great.
It's gonna be great.
Yeah,
Amazing. Well, I can't wait to see you bring this play to life and to be there creating my own little world as I create yours.
yeah, it's going to be really fun.
Amazing. Well, thanks for chatting with us, Emma.
Thank you. Thanks for having me and for this and for the season.
Well, we're
Great.
gonna we're gonna see you at the ruins.
See you at the ruins.
There you go. You can now stop recording.